Hello. Alright, so probably not going to spend too much time going over other stuff that I've changed, but basically there's simple AI models. They can ragdoll if they die. I'm pretty sure they're unstable at the moment in the sense that they have some issues with one of the jobs. I think the barkeeper job or something is bugged, so she doesn't properly bring in food. So they will all eventually die. But that's not really what I'm working on today. Mainly going to be working on the attack stuff, combat stuff, which means that I may bring the AI in to start trying stuff out with them. But basically, it's just figuring out how to do this sort of sword swingy thing. At the moment, this is show you what I have so far. Basically, there's like two modes for combat. Is like your, oops, yeah. So you're clicking, it locks your camera in place, and you're placing your the points you want your sword to follow within a certain range. So yeah, and then yeah, so it just kind of follows your swipe. Doesn't really angle the sword or anything like that, really. And it sort of interpolates from position to position. And so I think, yeah, so if you press Alt, you can kind of... Actually, wait, is my mouse even being captured? Yeah, my mouse is being captured. You can sort of press Alt to freehand it and kind of start your mouse where you want it. So ideally, the reason for this is twofold. One is basically that instead of... A lot of the stuff in this game is going to be sort of press a button and a verb happens, some kind of action happens, like like with items, it's pretty much like immediate. You just click on it and it adds it to your inventory. But because there's a lot more simulatory elements to the game, combat needs to have more moments where those kind of simulation elements can come up. So things like swords need to be able to like hit walls. Like if I swing a sword near this, it needs to sort of stop the sword midway through the swing and that sort of thing. That way positioning becomes more important. Using different tools that you have becomes more important. Using different items in different ways, or even just, being able to mess with the AI in certain ways is important, which means that it can't really be some kind of like simple function call where it sort of raycasts between you and the target and checks to see if could have hit them and then hits them, sort of like the way a lot of games do it. And so that means there needs to be sort of some kind of more direct control. It doesn't necessarily need to be this. Let's see if I can sort of talk through this a little bit better. Partially so that I know more what I'm doing as well. So this. Yeah, so the way a lot of games that try to like do more complex combat stuff is that there's kind of like a few different states that you can be in. But when you make the swing, so typically it'd be like you lock onto a target, and say like you always have like a little lock on system. The reason for that is that you kind of need two different axes to be able to control things. So like in normal games or games that are typically like this, it's like you have the left stick for movement and the right stick for looking around. But they have this lock-on system, so that way the movement system, instead of becoming like omnidirectional, to where you can go like any direction that you point the stick in, it sort of becomes more like a circling system like this. Which is really weird in first person. Most games that kind of have this system are they don't allow for this kind of thing where you kind of lock what your motion is. They usually have something more. It's more like you just lock your camera, basically. So like your view is locked, which means that you can't really circle around like that. You kind of need to move side to side like that, or like yeah, back into angles and things like that. But like you're always going to be this is always going to be your forward direction. So if the character they can usually move, wherever they want still, because they don't really need to free up an input or anything like that. They can do multiple things at a time. So with first person, while you're locked on, there's like the For Honor way to do it, which is third person, in which there's like 3 different axes. So if you're starting bottom left, then the opponent needs to block bottom left. They need to be in a blocking stance. Or I guess actually the blocking stance is the prepare to attack stance at the same time. So each person is in one of these 3 states, where they're sort of blocking that direction and also getting ready to attack from that direction. So it's sort of like a rock, paper, scissors system, kind of. So if they attack up and you're blocking bottom left, then you're going to get hit. Which is kind of what seems better in this system, because if we do a system like this, where it's directional positions at start, which is kind of what my original idea was, is that you would have, in my case, it would be more like chunks of the screen. So like you have the screen here, and you can put your cursor can be down here, and if it's down here, then it would be sort of a like thrust stance, like low attack. You wouldn't really necessarily be swinging, and then if you're over here, if your cursor is over here, left side, then it would sort of be like a slash across that way. And then up would be like an overhand attack. And it didn't really account for blocking. Like it wasn't directional blocking, it was just directional attacking. And then anything that came at you from the front would just be blocked if you were blocking. So it doesn't really incorporate blocking the same way the For Honor system did. Just with a which had different issues. The main issues being that in order to set up your start point for attacking like that, but actually I can background of this. But if you're picking your start point, that means that you need to do this camera lock where you don't have you can't do these motions. You need to do that early. So if someone wants to place their mouse here before placing their attack, that means that their mouse is going to start at the center of the screen, and then they need to lock their view while they're in combat, and then move their mouse where they want it to be positioned by their side, and then like up, down, left, right, basically in my case, or one of the 3 directions if I ended up doing it that way. And that means that they can't react for that time, and then they also, once they pick that like direction, that angle or that position that they want to attack, so like if they see someone attacking high, then rather than in the For Honor system where you would block high, you would put your stance into high mode, then you would attack low because it would leave them vulnerable. And ideally, in order to make this work, is that there would have to be feints, which is something that Chivalry has. It's also in For Honor, and it's also in Kingdom Come Deliverance. They all have feint attacks, so you can fake going high, and then if you go low to try to counter that, they can just stop their attack and then block you and leave you open for an additional attack. So not only are these they're decisions that you lock yourself into, but they also change over time. So a couple ways you can solve that is that, like, more traditionally, first-person melee combat is that there aren't feints and there aren't directions, and you say, I'm attacking this point right here. And rather than be locked onto something, you're really just, it's wherever you put the camera during the animation. So like if I do a left click and it's an overhand attack, then if they move to the side, I just need to move my camera. It hits them. So in either system, so you need to put your hand here early, you need to change your stance. There's different kinds of vulnerabilities that you're setting yourself up for, which For Honor solves by also being able to block that direction, which means there's only two ways that you can be attacked. But in most other systems, it's a lot more punishing, to where, like in Kingdom Come Deliverance, it's very punishing in that there are 5 directions that you can put your sword or your fighting stance or whatever. And it's way more about weapon combat, not so much. There aren't a lot of other elements to the game. Like For Honor they have bashes and they have maneuvers and they have combos and things like that, where it kind of depends on what the focus of your game is, because on that one it's more about basically a fighting game that's in 3D, and Kingdom Come Deliverance is more of like a simulator, which means that they want the combat mechanics to kind of be its own sort of game mode, which isn't necessarily what I want, and I don't really want the thing where you have to commit to this stance or lock your camera early. And so what I was going to do is, instead of moving it to where it is now, where it's lock your stance, is I was going to try to move it to basically a real-time mouse following. So like if I make a motion like this, then when I'm making that motion, like I'm holding down the mouse throughout this, and while I'm doing that, the sword is sort of wherever it starts at. If the sword is over here, then it's gonna follow that line. So basically, I don't know if it should be the tip of the. I guess it depends on where I put that. So like right now, it's the tip of the sword that's following it. So it would be like the tip of the sword follows it, and so you'd end up in like a stance like this. And then if you were to like do one that's kind of more like that, then in order to, like, there should be some kind of limit to how far the handle, or how far the distance this is from where the starting position is, before it would do something like move. I don't know why I gave it a very long handle, but move the whole sword over. So then from this, so like by having it be real time, those two things, it means you don't have to lock your camera. So it means you don't have to lock your camera. So if he can move these directions, oops, then you can also move those directions. Okay. Use a mouse. There we go. So if you can still do this, and if they move that direction, then you can sort of do like one of these, to where it would follow the sword like this, and then it would be a slash kind of up like that. And so I think ideally there would be some kind of decision-making layer to this, to know like what to do when it's up in this corner. And then it's sort of like playing an animation. So instead of just clicking a mouse and playing an animation, or setting yourself up into one of these 5 stances and playing a different animation based on the 5 starting stances, sort of controlling things from there. You're sort of just controlling the trajectory and where your camera is facing, and the animation is sort of a procedural animation that does the rest of the decision making for you, which does 2 things. Like when you do one of these 5-point stances, things cannot be what you intend when you pick them, and this kind of does the same thing, like having more decision making. Like, so for instance, if you do, I kind of need to clear this up because this is a little messy now. So if you were to do a maneuver like this, ideally, instead of it just being a thing where the sword follows this line perfectly, then when you do this, there would be something that kind of calculates the momentum that you lose, and so your final slash would be more like this. So it would sample a point here, sample a point here, sample a point here, sample here, and then sample these few points. And then it would, when it overshoots, so when it overshoots this point here, it would sort of lerp between these 2 points. That would be your new motion to kind of carry through the motion of the attack. So that's sort of a very high level final result we're looking for, is that it's going to move through what your mouse position is. And I think right now I'm still going to have it to where it locks the camera, but that's just so that way I can have a starting point to kind of see this motion vector and like how accurate it follows it and what I need to do for the sword and things like that. But ideally, I think that instead of it locking your camera, like a lot of first-person combat systems do for melee combat, I want it to sort of maybe basically just reduce the sensitivity of the camera while the animation is going. So that way you can still kind of react to when enemies move, because if they still have these, omnidirectional motion vectors they can do, you still have the same motion vectors, like you can move every direction, but then you can also still move your camera, which can kind of let you course correct. So instead of having like a buffer time where you're doing your motion, your attack lines, like the angles that you want to swing the sword, then you can kind of do that and then also kind of course correct afterwards while you're doing it, instead of just doing like a slash motion. And another weird part about this system is that like it's going to be hard to control things like the differences in attack speed between weapons. Is like, like right now the way I have it is that the attack speed determines how quickly it lerps from the first point to the final point, and it sort of lerps each individual point that it samples. It sort of lerps between each of them some variable amount of time based on the total attack speed. But what that doesn't really account for is the fact that if I wanted to follow the mouse cursor like this, like follow the line while you're clicking, then that basically means that you need to be able to do sort of short slashes, kind of. I don't know. It's gonna be weird to try to figure out how to balance that and make weapons seem different and have different kinds of weapons. Yeah, so basically what I need to do is I need to repurpose the actual swing. Or I guess just the way this happens. So, don't believe these points are actually used for anything. Yeah. Yeah, so here I was already previously doing the sensitivity reduction as opposed to locking the camera. Oh, okay, so this is my debug stuff. Get rid of all of this. I don't want it to reset the sword position right now. Okay, so it just straight up adds the mouse position at the moment, which is fine. So if where does stance get called at? Okay, so yeah, so stance is a coroutine that's just always running everywhere and then if so if this variable gets called, It's basically in an update loop right now. So if I do that, and then when I let go, it starts the swing coroutine. So I don't actually want that. I basically just want these to happen. This is going to be very broken at first, but that's basically all we need to do is just move the swing to happen while you're using the positions. Let's see how broke that is. Yeah, so if I press it, it's going to be doing each of the points. Yeah. I'm going to do nothing. That doesn't seem right. Definitely need to restructure this. Okay, so the way I have it broken up is that it's kind of this stance enum, which it doesn't even need to be. I can just put that in update while I'm testing it. Wait, that's crazy. None. So this unlocks the mouse. Basically this part right here. Doesn't need to be there. Oh, I see. So I need to do some kind of polling. Okay, so I do kind of actually need to do this. So if I don't have an event that starts it, oh, I do have an event that starts it. It's pressing down the left mouse button. So yeah, it restarts that. It starts tracking it, which means it's going to start adding things. Which means I need some kind of frame counter. Frame count 0. So we need to do this. I think it's running at like 60 FPS right now, but there's going to be some other way to make this more consistent. So yeah, it does kind of need to be based on time, but I can do that some other time once this is more fleshed out. So if the frame count is, let's just say 10, is that too little? Say 5. Frame count is going to start over, and that means that we can add that point, add the mouse point to that. So as long as I'm supposed to be tracking it, and then this also means that like as long as I am tracking it, so when I press the left mouse button down, yeah, so this part right here. Move that up here just so I can use it better. Alright, definitely don't need this to be also happening when you press E. So you can't look, it clears out the point vector list. I don't know that I want that. Do I want that? Yeah. So it clears it out, and then every 5 frames it'll add another point, another mouse point. And oh, that's kind of an interesting idea. I was just talking about having different like attack speeds for weapons. It can just be like, once this isn't frame dependent, once it's based on time, it can be like you have a certain amount of time that you're allowed to allot to your swing for it to follow before it resets your sword position, basically. That might be one way that you could differentiate weapons. Because that way something that has a slower attack speed, it would be easier to dodge, but you'd have, you know, a wider amount of distance that you could swing the weapon. That's sort of one way we could map it. And then I don't really need a coroutine that swings the weapon, do I? I think I can just do that. Have that update. Oh, and I do kind of need it to be independent. Because if I'm adding the positions, it needs to lerp between each of the positions one at a time. If it's gonna follow the mouse movement. This like direct. I mean, I know I was just. Actually, I didn't actually mention that when I was talking about like the sword movement stuff. There's a game that actually already does this. Daggerfall already does this. Like the second Elder Scrolls game, the first-person game that already has basically following your sword motion, like 1-to-1, basically as you swing. So I guess that's kind of something that maybe I should model it off of. Try that out. Yeah, I might want to research that more because I remember that was a game that I thought was weird for being able to do that because I don't really think it. I think they just scaled all the damage or all the differences between weapons by damage, not by the swings. So it stores all these positions for the sword point. Remaps the point to world space. Yeah. Maybe this is fine. So it says track it, which means it's feeding points into that, and then this is going to the points one at a time. But I think before it had like a finite list to go to before it started. And so I think by starting it now, it just runs out of points. Yeah, wait, is it resetting it here as well? That might be the problem. But we don't want this to reset it. Oh, this is stance. This isn't something we're using anymore. Based our other thing on. So when it starts, it grabs the list immediately. Yeah, so we don't want that. We kind of want to just get rid of... kind of just want to get rid of that. This might be an infinite loop though. I'll save first. Should probably clear this off as well. Oh, you can close all these. Close all documents. I think I need to think about this a different way because if I'm not really bringing up a list for them to go through. It would just be current position to the next position. Means every 5 frames, let's make it 10 because it seems to be happening too quickly. So every 10 frames, we'll add that. We'll add that next point. And when it adds the next point, it'll have another point to go to. So it would be vector 2. Actually, wait, yeah, vector 2, and then next point. Then instead of adding it here, we'll just say next point equals input.mouse position. So now the swing coroutine is more concerned with just this next position. So instead of this would just be while Well, what is true? Track mouse is true. Want it to target the next point, basically. So all this stuff. So do I need to clear next point off? I don't think I do, because it'll keep lerping to the same point. So as long as I'm tracking the mouse, just keep moving towards the next point, basically. If there's any change, it'll do it. And so how long does that lerp happen? Because the time elapsed is never going to change. Maybe it should just be 1 for now, just so we can see it follow it. Because we're not doing anything based on time right now. So I guess it should be whatever that is. Put a weight in here. What's 1 divided by 6? Like 15 or something. This goes on forever. Because reasons. Left mouse up isn't stopping it. Screen points needs to basically be just tracking a mouse. Track mouse should go away when I up. So why is it still adding next? Oh, okay, never mind. It's adding things to. What's adding things to screen point? Dance is still running. Dance still gets called at the start. We really just want to be looking at next point, seeing if that is being tracked accurately. The next point is 0, 0 right now. Doesn't seem to be constantly training, so the polling is working. We basically just need something to constantly lerp the sword at that point. I guess not really lerp. Right now we just wanted to point at it. I think it's called here. Mouse down, start swing. Go into swing, pulls all these different things. We don't need time elapsed anymore. It's endpoint. Why do I get the point here? So it takes the point. That's weird. That out here, I guess. Start point is whatever its position is. Endpoint should just be equal to this. Point end. I'm lerping between 25% between the start point and the end point. Why am I doing that? Rotates toward that point. Fine. Starting point. Where do I get the turn in? Oh, it's right here. Right. So basically mean it just jumps between the two positions of lerping. Oop. That's my sword. But it's not lerping anymore. If I click left mouse button, yeah, track mouse is on. Should be following my mouse. Point is accurately. Alright, we gotta turn on some debug stuff. Probably also, yeah, actually no, I should lock the camera so I can actually, let me try that manually, see what it does. So holding. Yeah. I don't know why I would go down there. I clicked in the middle. It should be pointing at the middle. Turn on a debug object. Alright, so I'm moving my mouse around the screen. Now let's look at these debug objects. Where are they placed? They all placed in the same spot? That is a problem. So that makes sense why the sword's doing weird stuff. So if point, why would point always be the same thing? Because this never gets called again. Hey, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense, I guess. Alright, so that needs to get called here. Every time we go through, it needs to get called. And same for instantiating the game object. Because I kept... Oh, okay, yeah. I don't need this one. I need this other game object to be instantiated. So, yeah, so now the position is actually going to get changed, because it's actually going to call this more than once instead of just doing it based on the first one. I'm not really entirely sure why the first position is down there, but that's probably just has to do with screen position. Well, that's sort of doing it, yeah. Alright, so let's turn off the debug stuff. Doing something correct at least. It stopped moving. Hmm. Seems like the position is going to my hand. Or my cursor, I mean. This is basically it, though. Obviously, it needs to actually follow some kind of, like, maximum distance and stuff like that, but yeah. If it was smoothly lerping. So from up here, it can be up to 2. Can I pause? Yeah. Be up to 2 meters away. So we need to change that and just make this something way smaller, like let's say 0.2 meters away. The endpoint is what I'm using here. Endpoint, point position, yeah. Seems like it over exaggerates the look at angle. Which I think is because of this part right here, where I subtract the 2. The look rotation. Maybe it just shouldn't be negative. That is correct. That is the vector it should be pointing at. Oh, you know what? Actually, maybe it's because it's if the sword is being positioned at 0.2 and the location of the point is also 0.2, maybe bugging out because they're kind of looking at the same position it's at. The Z is always going to be 0.2 for this, and that's where the sword is as well. So maybe this one being 2 is correct. I just need to make sure that this one right here is positioned further back. So sword is at 0.2 and the actual point is aiming at is 2 meters away. Or that broke everything somehow? Well, that's not right. Oh, it's behind me. Alright. You can still analyze its motion. Oh, that's really weird. Why would it... It's 0.2 relative. It's globally 0.2. Whereas when it does screen point array, that's not true. So it needs to be whatever, minus 1.8. So there's two things. I need to lerp the sword getting to there. The sword angle actually needs to switch as well. Actually, yeah, the angle along that axis doesn't actually change at all for the sword. Yeah, because for sword.up is the tip. Look at this. So if we have the sword up, then if I want this edge, that's up. So ideally this would be left, but maybe not. Might be forward. So it's either left, forward, or back. Okay. Let's try this. I think it's left. Wait, why is... Oh, because it's right, but it's negative right. Okay. So there's two things I need to do. Is I need to start lerping so that it smoothly moves the position. And then I also need the handle position to be different than the tip position. I'm doing this flip back and forth thing. It's like, all right. Do forward. I don't think left right is correct, so it's probably it's either forward or it's negative forward. Because we kind of want the edge of the blade to be following the direction it's going to. This is correct, yeah. Yeah, it seems like the edge is correctly following it. It seems super jumpy. That's just due to the lack of lerping, but yeah. So that means that there's two positions we need now. This is the sword, and then the point. So the point that it's pointing at seems correct, but the actual position it goes to, it needs to be a smaller number and weighted towards the original position. So if I take like the center of the screen and I find the offset of where the start position is from the center of the screen, or I can just clamp the value between that. First things first though, let's see how it looks just to make sure it's always reduced. So wait, let's see. So if the position, if I'm taking that position, this is in world space though, not local space. So let's take start position. Because this is world space as well. Oh wait, I guess it's not really original position. What do I have? Do I have an object that towards the start position? Start point. So start point I don't think changes. Because the action weapon, so start point, I have that referenced somewhere, let's hope. Start point is start position. There we go. Oh, that's what this is. So original position is the start position. Just worry about the X for that. So if I wanna, I don't want to, wait, I guess, yeah, subtracting it would find the difference, regardless of whether or not this is positive or negative. It'll be pretty close relative. So that's the endpoint. Original position minus something, right? I don't think I want, because if I get this, it would be like a halfway point. Maybe that's what I want. All right, let's try that out. Because like a halfway point is kind of what I was talking about before by lerping, or sorry, by clamping the position. Happening behind me? Just happening way over there. Do this from a front profile view. Top left is like top right for me. Oh, it's doing something. Will this have the inverse problem? So if it's that position and I'm subtracting it, then it's off by whatever the difference is. Maybe if I just lerp between it at with a value of 50%, that's more accurate. Yeah, so if adding it is it basically is putting on either side of the difference, either adding it too far to the left or too far to the right. So we want, so if it's halfway, that's right in the middle. So we want it a little under halfway. I think adding a let's just try it in the middle first though. And minus was correct, because minus was moving it to the right, which is all right. Yeah. So if I take that point, the end point, the point you're looking at, I take the start point and I go halfway between them. I guess I need to look at if start position actually moves at all during this. I might have been moving it from some other past implementation of this. Oh, start point never moves. I think that's what it is. Because it's not endpoint plus that. It should just be the lerp value. Not added anything. I just want the halfway point between those two positions. Where's my body? Okay, letting go of that needs to give me my mouse look back. Yeah. Mouse look equals false. Should say can look again. Let's swing offset in a weird way, but it's following the mouse. It's angled in the proper direction. I let go. It is not re-enabling that. Because that's not the issue. The thing is disabling it. Yeah, wait, why the hell? Why the hell is it getting disabled? Something is continuously disabling it. Whatever, I can add the lerping in and deal with that later. So if it's happening every 15 seconds. So then I just need a timer instead. Yeah. So instead of while, it would be, oh no, it would still be while, but I just need another loop in here. That means we need float, time elapsed. Delta time. We don't want that. Wait. So it's gonna go through this. It'll say this, and then it'll get stuck in this loop. It'll count through. And while this is going, we're gonna keep lerping based on time elapsed divided by 0.5. What the hell? Nope. We don't need that anymore. Do you need a delta? You need a yield return after all this. Really freaking out, man. Why do they keep going back and forth? It doesn't have a new position? How does it keep the old start position? Oh yeah, it always seems to be coming from the middle. Not the previous position, because the previous position would be along the top. Something's resetting it. It is just going to keep going in start position, which changed all the way over here. Fair enough, that needs to update more often. Every time it comes back around here, it needs to update that. Then same for the rotation, I guess. And this thing I don't think gets used anywhere. How about this? Nope. That one does. Yeah. Get rid of all these from the previous implementation. Doesn't matter. The can't attack thing seems a little, I don't know. Seems a little unnecessary. Continuous. There we go. Much better. Ooh, I just realized something. That actually not really relative to, right? Because like I think that the sword kind of is going to be in the same angle no matter what, or how I. Also, yeesh, that's really far away. How did that get so far away? Here. Bit. Oh man, wait. That stays pretty close. Oh, I see, because like here it makes more sense. Because it's the tip of the sword. But here, because the handle keeps that certain angle. Seems like it's super far away. Because like there I can kind of imagine. You know, actually, maybe instead of it being the start point, viewpoint. We're only worried about the position, so none of this rotation stuff matters. Kind of far away from the player as well. Cool. Monet right here. It's pointing towards me. Now, why in the world? Because I turned around? Is there something wrong with the way I'm doing rotational stuff? Is it because I set that to be 2 and it's not relative? Forward. See this better. Not really, actually. Huh. It's really jittery. It shouldn't be. And the handle seems to be directly in line, like it's not even being adjusted at all. Yeah, so a couple of issues is this whole thing right here that doesn't fly because it's a screen to world point. Actually be, yeah, camera.main dot forward, transform dot forward, z plus 2f. Maybe. Something else is the problem. But from this angle, it seems like the far point could be the close point is staying closer. Oh wait, so maybe it is working, but it's just because of the perspective of the camera. If I take a top-down view, why not? Why can't I move my camera? Yeah, because the back is pointing towards the camera and there's a perspective on it. It looks like it's... This is actually correct. This is like pretty much exactly what I wanted. Okay. Get the sword. Much too far away. So why can the position get that far? Because like this. Oh, because it's only minus a static number. Let's do a lerp on that as well. Don't want it to be halfway, so if it's between the first number and the second number. So we want it to be closer to the second number by a wide margin. Okay, and so let's look at the local axis on this. So Z is forward. The red is X. Y. No, Z is up down for this. Because that's the point that is. So that's up. And this is right left. Yeah. So we need forward, back. So I need back to start angling towards something. This needs to happen first. So while you're going through, grab those numbers, get the next point, lerp to it, repeat. to the top of it. Open hold point. Doing there either. I want this. I want the Z axis angle properly. Ooh, I kind of need to look at what the hold point is doing, because I might be able to do some just local shenanigans. If I do this, swing, like right here, pointing towards it, right? So from there, it kind of keeps this angle a little bit. Yeah, actually, like that you want negative 90. And for this, you don't want negative 80. Oh yeah, wait, over here. Wait, that looks correct now. I go between this point and that point. Hmm. Oh, look rotation, is that what I'm using? Yeah, look rotation. So I want the vector 3 dot up to point at it, which I manipulate by having this hold point. Oh wait, actually, you know what? It's the forward vector, isn't it? Yeah, it's the forward vector, not the up vector. Because up would be this one. Why is that? Is it local versus, yeah. Hmm. So it creates a rotation with the specified forward and upwards direction. So for the up, I use the local position up. So I say I want this up to be up, And that is probably why it rotates like that. I want that to always be pointing up. So that means that I can lerp and change whatever up is. Moving the forward to look at that. Then I want the up direction to angle towards the previous point. Hmm. Like it's always going up and down like this. This is what I want. I want it to point at the direction you're going, I guess, for the endpoint. But I need to get a direction out of it. If it's always lerping from oh, I guess it's lerping from the start point. Whatever its position was at the start. The endpoint is further away. It means that that up vector is going to be pointing basically forward as well. We don't want that. We want it to be start position here. Hmm. I want it to basically be this. But with this always being 1, that ends up with a vector. Yeah, let's try it. Whatever. Starting to overanalyze this, I think, a little bit. So it has Turnian issues. Well, so if I go up this way, it should angle the sword to face that direction. So I basically just created one problem with another. With the up vector, to always be looking at the endpoint. think the issue here is that I'm working global space, not local space. That is exactly what I'm looking for. So I don't want to directly check that. Yeah, so this goes from one angle to another. That's not really what I'm looking for. Definitely looking for a different quaternion function, though, I think. This is basically the move between two. Hmm. The way I think this is working is taking the up position right here. That's not what I want. Oop. Yep. I think I want it to be the forward and pointing it towards this, which is the difference, like the direction between the middle and wherever my mouse is pointed. Forward. On up down, so it's right. Hmm. So if the angle of the sword isn't like, it's not really doing what I want it to do. But it's better before, I think, when I was just having it follow the sword, but it doesn't really do like the yaw effect I want it to do, sort of. So like maybe just Other thing is I'm not really sure if it's gonna look correct. I assume it would, but it looked a little weird before, just because of the perspective on the camera with it moving around. Because I presume there's a way that I can figure out this angle and then just apply it and not have to have it be calculated based on the changing of the target position. Yeah, like this is kind of what I mean. Like this is up and down, but it looks like it's angled, but it really isn't angled. Or yeah, so if I can figure out what that angle needs to be, I can just apply it with this. Hmm. Like in this case, that seems about right. What if I do this? Like it's always pointing up because the angle between the handle that are always. So if we make a new vector 3, that's this dot x. This is always whatever I did for. I think the issue is that it's still kind of pointing forward for both of these, which is what I want. I want it to be pointing like in a normal vector away from it. So there's this thing where it flips there. Not really sure why. Yeah, I don't know how I get that angle properly. Proper angle. Because up definitely isn't right. I didn't even think about that. I should probably be looking at vector functions more than I'm looking at quaternion functions. I don't want that. Maybe I do want that. Well, so the angle between this isn't between 2 points, it's the angle between 2 positions. So I think this is actually what I want. Maybe. Because that would be the angle between the actual sword and the angle between the target that it's aiming at. So maybe that is what I want. Oh wait, wait? There's a function called angle between. What's angle? What is angle between? Wait, that's weird. Why did angle between show up? So angle, yeah, angle between. Oh, it's what angle used to be called. Fair enough. This returns a float. That makes sense. So then we start applying this here. Then we also want sword holder dot transform dot rotation dot local rotation. Whew. What the hell? Oh, it's a missile. Okay. I was like, that's a weird character. Yeah, so we want it to follow along its trajectory, basically. Oh. Wait, but this, he was saying he was having this issue, though. Look rotation based on its velocity. I'm not using look rotation. I am looking look rotation. His look rotation function is only taking one argument though, so is that the forward? Yeah, so it'd be taking the forward, not the up. We're concerned with the up. We don't care about it pointing at something, we're already doing that. With this part, the second part, yeah, that should be the velocity. Even have a rigid body? Real question is, does it track its velocity? This part doesn't. That part does. When it's not kinematic, does it track its velocity? This is the collider, right? So in this case, it would be, this would be something kept and everything. So it's okay for me to reference this. So because you want to rotate for your velocity, maybe I should print out the velocity. If it's tracking it. Well, it's not printing anything. Slider here. Following it. Yeah, it's just it has no velocity. Is that because it's kinematic? Is it kinematic even? It is kinematic. Huh. So it's continuous, doesn't interpolate, it is no longer kinematic. Let's turn off this kinematic. Because I'm not adding any force to it, I guess, to control it. Yeah. Well, so like ideally you would just do the previous position into the start position. So maybe what I need to do is, or into the next position, not the start position, and just track the previous point. Previous point. I really thought there was like some sort of, there's just be a mathematical way to derive the angle you're looking for, and there probably is. So you just want the previous point, and so every time you set the next point, down here, every time you set the next point, then first you need to take the previous point and equal the next point to that. And then here, just figure out that angle. So previous point minus next point, not equals. Be a vector 3, it prints out. And then with this, we kind of want to know the angle for that. The angle from this position to that position. Then we can kind of, we should start creating these as well. Creating the game object again. Debug this. So I can estimate what I think the angle between those is and see if this is printing out something proper. Yeah, so I don't want it to collapse, sorry. Did it do 0 for every single one? No, it didn't. Okay. So while I was actually clicking and dragging. Now see, that's weird. Why would the angle it prints... You're looking at the angle between the positions, right? Yeah, so it'd be like this angle right here. Oh, okay. Maybe that's a little bit more. Well, so like this, the angle between this and this. Be a lot more than that. 90? Hmm. Because like it should be like an X. Like on here it would be, have a grid. And you would have this point, this point. Angle difference between them. This depends on what the 90-degree point you're measuring from is. Angle turned is the unsigned angle between two vectors, meaning the smaller of the two possible angles. The result is never than 180 degrees. Smaller of two possible angles. Shit, man. No, this isn't what I want. I need the actual flip and angle. So this isn't giving it to me. Because like, so in this case, angle I want is this angle between there and there. This point and this point. Which would be, I don't know. It would be relative to the sword, right? Actually matters. Fuck. Alright, so I don't really totally understand the way quaternion logic works, but or like how like what each of the four vectors means, but seems like it's giving me like a slight difference based on it, and it's only along one of the axes. Because I think like one of these is the forward point, which is probably these first three, and then this last one is the angle relative to that forward point, but maybe that doesn't make sense. Oh yeah, because it'd be 0 to 1. So because like the angle relative to that forward point isn't changing, but it's pointing out where the forward vector would be shifting. So that's the angle. That's the full angle. So if we take angle dot Euler angles and just look at the z, maybe. Right. All right. So if I go here to here, I wish I could. Yeah. So back and forth, here to here, going 0. That's 360. Why is that? 4 degrees. Because like I definitely never goes negative either. Well, whatever. Let's try it. Oops. Needs to be the alert.c. Weapon hold point. Weird. Yeah, so it's local rotation, right? You don't want. Chance I'm overthinking this, because if it's look rotation and this is the, well, first of all, that part doesn't matter. But now that I have the 2 previous points, then maybe I can just get the direction vector of that and make that part of my quaternion and tab that out. So it should be angling it based on the direction between the two. Oh yeah. Man, so when it's, because it's 0 to 0, so they're on top of each other. Yeah, there we go. It was that simple. All I need to do is pull the previous point. Yeah. Yeah, I'll do that. Get rid of that. Get rid of all that. Get rid of that. Comment that out. Awesome. So I haven't done an IK for models in a while. I should do a check to make sure. To make sure there's actually a difference in position. So it'd be like if
times.
So if the magnitude of this is greater than 0? Otherwise, we don't want to change this rotation. Right. I'm only changing as long as there's like actually a significant difference between those 2 points. Although maybe that'll still rotate it back. Yeah, because it still does that other... It still has to have something for that. Let's see. Well then, instead of that, then... Oh wait, yeah. Shit. So the up vector should be whatever the difference, the direction between these two is. And then if they're right on top of each other, it's going to be up and down. Maybe more the solution is that we shouldn't set the rotation here unless that difference is great enough. I'll give it a bigger dead zone. Yeah, so don't set the rotation unless there's a significant difference in these. That way it'll stay whatever the last angle was since the last swing. Those flip when you cross, because the screen point up here is 0, 0. That's 0, so this should all be positive. Because of where I'm standing? Ooh, wait. It only pulls that when I start. And I also sort of have this I'm going up from here. Oh, it's twirled here. That's real weird why it does that. It needs to be like some point over here. Maybe it is like a world space thing. So it angles to follow the correct direction. but it has these like twirl points, like because when these points get converted to world space, if one of them's negative, maybe it gives a weird angle for this, because like it would be. So maybe I need like the absolute here, or then the wrong positions. Next point minus the previous point. That could happen if it's a negative number issue. What was the other thing? I just had a thought about something that I could easily add to this. Oh, the issue is mostly. Okay. I don't think I. Wait. Yeah, I think maybe I fixed that other issue, but because like now it looks a little weird because like it's doing like a. Oh, okay. Yeah, so like because like if you're swinging a sword and that's your forward vector, then when you went back the other way, you wouldn't rotate your hand. Oh man, that makes this so much more complicated. That means that like, because the follow through would be different. You'd go up and then you'd go back down without re-rotating the sword. Which means that so this is the I would need to make this negative. So it would depend on which direction you're swinging. Right? So if I let's see, so if I swing down and I swing back up. But if I swing down and I swing to the side, that's like pretty smooth. So do I need to figure out? This might be something I can do. So if I find these 2 points, there might be some kind of value difference between them that would indicate whether or not they're going back the way they came. Because if they go back the way they came, then this should switch to a negative. So like if the magnitude yeah, but then there'd probably be edge cases, because if I go up and then down, no, actually it going negative going up and down, so it's basically just we need to figure out the intent of the direction. Oh right, I remember what I was gonna add. I was gonna add like pseudo momentum basically, because that's gonna be important if we're gonna have any kind of overshoots with the swings. Because now that I have the previous point and the next point, then I can see the magnitude difference between that. I guess I should just print that out and see if there's anything special I can do with that. Which is right here, yeah. It's like swing magnitude, I guess. Oops. So if you have a low swing magnitude, then we don't need to rotate it, because it's just like the follow through of what you're doing. Then I can just debug this, and this is gonna be basically what we use instead of a velocity. We're mostly interested in like what the difference between its previous point and its current point is. And then maybe, so if I'm getting the magnitude of this, and I get the direction vector, so I need to store the previous direction vector, I guess, as well, and I can compare those two to see if they're going back the same direction. This one doesn't need to be... Actually, none of these need to be public. Maybe the next point just for debugging. Direction. Last swing direction. That would just... Where do I actually use that at? I use that here. So I find this angle, and then I slowly lerp between it every time. So I only really need to do that once at the start. Oops. The last swing direction equals next point minus previous point. So I want to print that out too. I guess it shows. Let's just call this velocity. Even though it like isn't technically, but may as well think about it that way. Because like, yeah, this makes this part make a lot more sense rather than just saying like the magnitude of these two vectors. But like if you have low velocity, then obviously you don't need to angle the way you're facing the sword because you're not actually really swinging it. So if we have, so basically I think the way we're thinking about this is if the angle at which you're swinging the sword is, oh yeah, wait, so like when I start a swing, it sets it here, and so that would mean like if any of this, the one that I'm calculating every time I swing, or while I'm swinging, if this one is the inverse of the last swing direction, then we would want to make sure that that number becomes negative. Oof. Okay. So we aren't collapsing, so let's just, so the swing direction, so do we check each one of these values and we see how different they are. Because swing direction, the third value is always going to be different. So there'd be some, or the same. So there'd be some kind of threshold to where we flip it to negative. Yeah. It's like if your angle doesn't, your swing angle doesn't change that much. What is the maximum number here? I guess it's, oh wow. Swing direction is 760. So I need to normalize it then. Okay, let's start printing out a normalized version of that. Normalize. That should be from 0 to 1. And so then it's basically just percentages. So let's calc this out. This would be vector 3 current swing direction. And then it would be multiplied by a float negative, no, it'd be, we'd do it this way. So float negative multiplier. What are those statements called? The What's the question mark? Statement C#. Right. Okay. We would say I would need to find the difference here as well. So that would be so if difference is less than, I guess it would be like from 0 to 1, so 0.2. The difference is less than 0.2. Then we want it to be, if that's true, then we want it to be -1. If that's not true, we want it to be 1. So now we can just always multiply it by the negative multiplier. It will figure out whether or not it should be negative or positive. It's still doing the flip. Okay, so maybe that print difference. Magnitude difference is always 0. What have I done? Because it's always less than that. It's always negative. Hmm. Yeah, I think I need to reconsider how I'm doing. Comment this out. Comment that out. We still have our velocity thing we're dealing with. Yeah, so let's just look at the angle and the velocity and we'll see if we can notice a pattern. Hmm. One way I can see that would be possible is based on, well, it could just be based on the direction, like we have been doing. But you could also just be doing it based on the position, like the next position. So if I am swinging downward, or if I swing down here and then I swing back up. Oh, wait, never mind. So if I swing down and then back up, then I can just check the Y position on each of those 2 points. Or I guess the X position, because like in that case, I'm only really interested in the change in the X position. Because if the X doesn't change, that means it's going up and down. And then if the Y doesn't change very much, that means it's going side to side. And then you don't want to do it. So I think that might be the simplest way to do it. Hmm. think I might have been wrong about my initial assumption. Let's remove this. I think it's not so much an issue whether that's incorrect, that you would switch it back the other way. I think it's just about how fast it's moving that makes it look so incorrect. Swing velocity, if it's less than that. So, well, yeah, so swing velocity, magnitude. Needs to be normalized. Dot normalized. Dot magnitude. Because it happens very quickly. It goes from, because it's only 1/15 of a second, right? It rotates to the next point. Maybe this time frame needs to be larger. So yeah, so let's try it with twice as much time. This should just be a flow. That happens in like 1/8 of a second or 1/6 of a second. It rotates. Goes in like 2 intervals. This looks so weird. What is... Alright. So, because this is always running, right? Let me check. No, it's always running as long as I'm holding down the mouse. It means that when I make a change, it can be at a variable point in this process. So sometimes it looks like it's happening very quick, and then sometimes it looks like it's happening over the full 0.3 second duration, and the way that's broken up isn't really controlled by anything. Which I think means that instead of it being driven on just constantly running while you're holding down the mouse to like swing your sword, it needs to be running based on the difference in the position of your mouse, kind of. Like if you move the mouse, then that's when it starts lerping between it, rather than it just constantly trying to lerp between it. But that could just be, maybe it's just more noticeable because I changed the time here. So maybe I just changed the time too much, and now it is just so noticeable that it seems like an issue. Definitely gonna need to be something else lerping it. Yeah, like see now it's a little bit quicker. There's still, yeah, there's still, like look at that. Whoa, why does it do that? Like the position changes and the rotation changes when you go left to right. Only sometimes. Like see that did it properly. Following the angle of the sword properly. Is that like a gimbal lock thing? Like is the rotation reaching some kind of like arbitrary maximum? Like this area right here, whatever the number values I'm giving it are really freaking it out in that particular area. It seems to be mostly fine. otherwise. Alright. Those are some relatively minor like tweak issues. Stop this stuff from debugging. Oops. And time to look more into collision. That's probably the last thing I'm going to look into before calling it a night. I have the weapon collider. It's a melee collision. It has a finite amount of damage. I assume it's just calling the damageable function. Yeah, it just tells whatever it hits to take damage. So let's try it out, I guess. Basically, oh wait, yeah, but I can't, whoops, I can't rotate my camera once I start swinging my sword. So I guess what we do, let's turn the AI back on. And I am going to make it so one of them can't move. Wait, where am I positioned? Yeah, we'll have Abe not be able to move. Here. And second thought, does this automatically re-enable when I press play? Nope. Gabe's stuck. Alright, Gabe. Unlucky day for you, my man. He's trying. Alright. Oops. Yeah. That sword should definitely be hitting him. Let's turn everyone off but Gabe. So it hits him. Oh yeah, wait, he lost health. Wonder why I wasn't taking damage before. All I did was add a debug statement. Because maybe I was swinging too fast before. Yeah, alright, so his health bar is a little bit low. Alright. Sorry, Gabe. Oh yeah, alright. That'd be a terrible reason to have to update to Unity 2018 for this project, is just so that I can have like the angular collision sweeping. Wait, am I not doing damage anymore? Oh no, it is. Yeah, the collision texting is really bad. 3 HP. Next time it works. 1 HP. And he's down. So let's see. So I think my base damage on my sword was 70, or 30, sorry. He has 100 HP. Yeah, Abe is dead, man. Feels bad. Oh yeah, here we go. Armor rating. Wait, armor damage reduction 0.733. That is extremely high, considering he has an armor rating of 0. He has no armor, but his armor craftsmanship is through the roof. And his armor health is through the roof. Yeah, let's go ahead and look at that damage. That damage function. So armor damage reduction, which is the armor health plus. Okay, so it's a flat plus. So this is basically 2 divided by 3. Update armor. So this formula is probably fine. As long as it only happens if you're wearing armor, I guess. But otherwise they just need to be all 0. Okay. Yeah, so armor health goes to 1 when I press play. Why is that? This is net armor health divided by 100. Net armor health. That should be based on the actual object he's wearing his armor, right? Nope, apparently not. Oh yeah, so it goes through all of the armor he's wearing. But it has a default value. Yeah, where's this getting set? Not in the inspector. Equals. On my selection. Entire project. No more occurrences. Yeah, that's much more reasonable. He has a natural 6% armor reduction. Or damage reduction. It's only doing 3 damage still. Well, let's look at the sword. Maybe the sword is... It's doing 30 damage. His armor class. He should not have an armor class, should he? His armor class should be 0 and his net armor health should be 0. He doesn't have armor on. Not taking any damage now? Very weird. Hmm. But saying it hit something. But it hit it. I guess I should do that only if it's in here. Maybe it's not hitting anything with that component. Hitting the target, but he's not printing out that he's taking damage. Like it hit him. It called the function. And if it called the function, have to do one of these two different things. But it is not. I'm not getting any errors. Well, I am getting a lot of errors, but that's just because I removed his ability to move. Oh well. The next thing I deal with is the collision issue, because it probably shouldn't be done this way to begin with, now that I'm thinking about it. Well, no, hold up. Now that I think about it, look at his collision. Each of these things have collision. No, don't have the component, but they might be adding to the compound collision of this. Because I feel like it was calling that function a little more frequently, because it should be on trigger enter. Calls it the once. That's true, collision is actually working fine. It's some other issue. Cool. Alright, that's where I'm gonna stop, and I'll deal with the collision on that some other time. I need to get IK on the actual sword so that the character's kind of moving around. I probably need to do an animation for that of like a fighting stance, and then we can IK the hands to it, and that'll follow through on the swing. And that'll also inform how I need to adjust the values, because right now they're pretty arbitrary about how far away the sword goes from the, from the camera and things like that. Just because, like, right now it looks okay from the camera's perspective, but if you have hands in the mix, it might look a little weird, like they might be getting too hyperextended. So IK and damage, and then need to theorize a way to map this to the AI agents, like this kind of system. Although I guess that really would just be them breaking it up into a few separate canned attacks, and then the player can have a little bit more variety. And so they would attack right if you're attacking right, sort of, if they want to attack you, that sort of thing. So that's gonna be a pain in the ass to manage their AI. I need to write them a new attack routine. But it'll be cool once the player can kind of interact with that. So alright guys,